Okay. Where should I? Okay. Here. In terms of like maybe I didn't have to.
Break around seconds, so people going back.
Sure. Probably yes. Right. Right now, it looks like there are 12. Yeah. Trying to order 2 cakes from 2 different people, 2 different somehow or other. Everything right. And even one of them is like that. Oh my goodness, they didn't charge me for sure. But there's this amazing school. She tried to get some state. That's the lights and my stuff on
You're a great mom.
my face was so.
Okay, yes.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that was nice. Oh, I wouldn't worry about that. ordinance.
We'll start in 1 minute.
And I think it was well. Because I was trying it out.
Right. Okay, well, start. To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
To announce that the 48-hour notice is required by the Open Public Meetings Act, was emailed to the Asbury Park Press, the Post Star, and the New Post Star on December the 16th of 2021. That a copy has been placed in the bulletin board in the borough office, and that a copy has been filed with the borough clerk. Mr. Bennell,
Here.
Mr. Gubatose,
Here.
Mr. Sexsmith,
Here.
Mr. Weber, absent, Mayor Fox.
Here. Okay, good evening, everybody, to meeting 15 of 2022. We have a number of topics to address tonight. We have 3 workshops, discussions, both related to bond ordinances on fairly important topics. And then we have a couple of presentations, a little bit more depth on the survey that was just completed on Lorraine Avenue Church, and a presentation on the Stormwater Utility grant that we're applying for. There are 2 introductions for ordinances tonight, both related to bond ordinances. We have 1 adopted ordinance on the Fletcher Lake Commission. So why don't we get started? We've got we budgeted about 5 minutes each for these bond ordinance workshops. The first bond ordinance is the improvements to Park Place Avenue that we had spoken about probably back in May, June timeframe. We had received a DOT grant of about $193,000. CME, our engineering firm, has done the estimating for the total project, so we are bonding $363,000. I think Anthony's on, our CFO. Anthony, are you on?
I definitely see him.
You do? Okay. Is he on mute?
Yes.
Okay, do you want to unmute?
Michelle, can you unmute Anthony, please?
Thanks. So this will be some sewer work and some road work on Park Place. It'll take place in the fall. So I'll open it up for comments by the council at this point. Any questions or comments on it? Okay. Okay. Then we can move to the second bond ordinance, which is bond ordinance 2022-11. This this ordinance reduction that we're going to be talking about today is for authorization for 3,500,000. Those that provided kind of in concert between a couple of the engineering firms vying for some of the initial work on this, TM and CME. No, I'm sorry, not CME College, although CME has also provided some insight. This is pre-adoption, it's an introduction. We are working closely with Avon, and we will work out pre-adoption and agreement between Avon, the financial people between Avon and us, and split the cost of this. Again, this is an authorization. It's not, we're not going to go out and borrow 3,500,000. We're just asking for authorization to do so. So I'll again open it up for any questions at this point. Yes. Yep.
I do have a number of questions. Question number one, Mr. Mayor, is some or all of this ultimately should we move forward and not only bond but incur expenditures? Would any or all of this be related to beach utility as opposed to the general fund?
It would probably be more of the beach utility. So not, it flows through the beach, the pipe to the beach to the ocean, but the outfall pipe really is a stormwater versus beach. That's what it does. It's really more stormwater than the beach.
There's language in here in a couple of spots, and perhaps this is a question for our CFO, Mr. Menino, but in referencing the potential of 3.5 million in bonds, we state that it would not impact the gross debt of the borough, as the notes provided in this bond ordinance, because the purposes authorized herein are self-liquidating and deductible from the. And I was.
You can hear me?
Sorry.
Anthony, you're breaking up.
Your question? Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So you're referring to the debt authorization.
Yes.
So this ordinance is a little weird because it's shared between two municipalities. So the mayor had mentioned about the ordinance authorizes 3.5 million in debt. That's technically true. But in total, what the ending effect is going to be is about half of that. Because as we have expenditures, 50% of those expenditures are going to be reimbursed by Avon. So as we get reimbursements from Avon, it's going to decrease that 3.5 million authorization down to about half of that if we use all of it. Obviously, whatever we don't use will be canceled. So we authorize the 3.5 just to get it on our books. But then at the end of the day, the actual debt that we might have to worry about is probably about 1.25 or 1.75. But then also there's a possibility of getting grants at a later point, which would even decrease that 1.75 even more.
Okay, so thank you, Anthony. You actually covered my next question as well as answering that one, in that I was going to ask if we were splitting this with Avon, did this mean it was 7 million? And the answer is no. You said it should be half, roughly half of the 3.5.
Yep. In order to record the authorization or the spending authority, we have to record the 3.5 in total. So it was just a legal way for us to actually record the ordinance. So that's why you see the 3.5.
I was also starting to ask the question, again, I'm sure you can help me understand this, but there's language in a couple of places here that references that the gross debt of the borough is not increased because these funds are deemed to be self-liquidating and are deductible from the borough's gross debt.
So what that's referencing is our annual debt statement. So every year we have to file our annual debt statement. Every time we have a bond ordinance, we have to file a supplemental debt statement. So in there, the whole point of the debt statement is for us to calculate our net debt. How much debt is outstanding that's attributable against our equalized valuation basis. So because the utility is self-liquidating, meaning that the revenues are in excess of the expenses, the total amount that's being authorized for the utility will not increase our net debt as far as the calculation goes to get to our maximum debt. Now, it's going to increase at a later point when we actually issue debt. It'll be authorized. So it'll increase the total dollar of the debt. But what that's referencing is the actual net debt limit that's statutorily in place, which is 3.5% of our equalized valuation basis.
Okay, and for clarity, when you mentioned the utility, specifically, what are you referencing when you say that?
The beach and sewer utilities, both of them are self-liquidating.
Is it your understanding that that this debt would be issued under one or both of those utilities as opposed to the general fund? The current fund?
It would be, yeah, so it would be issued underneath the beach utility.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
No further questions.
Okay, we'll move to the next agenda item, which is presentations and bids. So the first, could you pull up Miranda on there? Miranda, are you on?
I'm here.
Okay, so you're gonna get her presentation format.
Michelle?
Whenever screen share is enabled, I'll click over.
There you go, good, okay.
Okay, Miranda, just let me give a quick prelude here. As we all know, we've been working on this for a few years. This is part of the process that we've gone through post the engineering analysis and the costing. We had a bunch of town halls. The town halls, we got a number of people asking for a survey, so that the entire community, both people that voted here and did not vote, had a voice. We did that. We did that through. We utilized Miranda's company to do that. And what we want to do today, we did send out as soon as we got it, kind of a highlights of the survey. What we'll do now is we've asked Miranda to just go into a little bit more information. I think she's going to spend about 15 minutes with some additional survey information, and then we'll hold about 5 minutes for council clarifying questions, and then any public questions we'll take on email and get back very comprehensive. So why don't you take it away, Amanda?
Sure. Thanks for having me. My name is Marina Nash. I worked with your BA, Kim Humphrey, and a group of resident advisors to work on structuring the borough's data about the proposed project into an accessible digital survey for the community. And if you have seen the highlights, you'll see I do include a lot of that here, but I'm also trying to touch on, the approach and where we were coming from in context and things like that. I'm just going to preface this that if I sound out of breath, I apologize. I am 8 months pregnant, so just bear with me on that.
Take your time. Take your time.
Yeah. No, I'm trying not to, I'm going to get in there and get with the flow. So as a quick recap, the survey ran from July 15th to the 31st. It was linked to a number of supplemental documents from the borough for respondents to review. So a quick look at high-level demographics here. There were 927 verified submissions. These were mainly residential property owners mainly responded in English. The majority actually responded on a mobile device. That's not really a surprise in this day and age, but it does flag an opportunity for communications to always be tweaked to be mobile friendly. So just an interesting takeaway there. And I'm going to touch on engagement a bit in a few slides down, but I was really impressed with the community engagement in general, given that nearly half of the people who responded were only somewhat aware of the project. It's really impressive to see the number of responses, even from folks who might have had sort of a vague wishy-washy idea of what was going on. So while running this survey was a temperature check on opinions, it also really functioned as an awareness campaign, and also in a bit of a way, an education tool. And that was not limited to this project, as there were a lot of comments, a lot of people responding on completely unrelated topics, which is very cool. So here is the initial temperature check. The purpose of this question was to grab a baseline understanding of how people felt coming into this without reading through more history. But this is just a reference point, since people responding would have already had the opportunity to download and read supplemental materials if they wanted to. And the majority did state that they had done that either partially or fully. So the next major thing to take a look at are financial considerations. I'm going to take a second to just touch on the approach we took for this, since tax and financial things for estimated projects can be very complex and confusing. So we did present estimated data based on mean and median property values. So financial data is analyzed by a third party. It was provided in spreadsheet form, which is I believe available. While this analysis fit the bill of what the borough wanted to analyze, from a comms purpose, it's difficult. It's never super useful to present the public with complicated spreadsheets and expect really anyone to take the time to distill down into what that actually means for them. So how to simplify the complex? We worked to take that distillation on and present the information in the simplest way possible, both for accessibility and also to ensure we didn't have a steep drop off of folks who would just say, you know what, no way, I don't want to bother with this. This is too complicated, that sort of thing. So we took that on as an understanding versus trying to find a way to get detailed estimates of many different outcomes, and looking at, okay, how can we engage a high level understanding of the analysis? And what would that look like? So doing this made it so that instead of having a super high, brain load, looking at a complex spreadsheet, we instead were able to gauge if the borough needed to do further work on helping the community understand where these numbers were coming from, and what they might mean to them. So this would also give the borough time to further educate the public if needed, to make them feel more informed, that sort of thing. So we stated that we were looking for a level of understanding, presented a simple data table pulled from the third-party analysis. And then we prompted a yes or no question using numbers from the table that the respondents had just viewed. Oops, sorry about that. This ended up being a really successful exercise for this audience in terms of responding that they had a strong agreement that they understood the data presentation. So just to give the borough an idea of, okay, we're on the right track on how we're actually speaking to people about this, which is very important when you're trying to communicate something a little bit complex. And this also set the stage for further add-on financial presentations. Let's say if the project moves forward, you could always take a deeper dive and use this as sort of a jumping off point. So that was the approach for that piece of it. And now also we had project comparisons. These are always very tricky. And these were no exception. The goal here was purely to assess, sorry, the needs and priorities of people responding versus it was not an exercise to make a formal apples to apples comparison. So as this was a survey and not a research study or a focus group, we tried to approach this from a very high level and simplified to 6 projects and asked folks to rank them in order of interest. We did provide cost estimates to give context on how taxpayers might want to prioritize spend, but those estimates weren't meant to be like a formalized marker on how anyone should approach spending. It was more a contextual thing to help people rank different projects that they have interest in. When I should give you this is where our project ranking results fell. Tons and tons of interest on Main Street improvements. They were also, that was also mentioned in the comments quite a bit. Beach and Dune sewer. There were a lot of comments regarding interest in infrastructure, things like that. Seem to be maybe standard shore town responses, but some really great comments overall. So I have just a few slides here on engagement, which is incredibly important. Willingness to leave comments and feedback is actually huge. And about 35% of people opted to leave a comment. And I think I've said it a bunch of times, these comments are really gold mine. It's a gold mine for information on community interest, not just in this proposed project, but also Bradley related interest. So one of the reasons why this is so important is because these comments can be mined regardless of topic to create FAQ documents, informational meetings, packets, any of those types of things. So on a similar note, this might sound like I'm nerding out on this, but bear with me for a second. One of the most impressive things about this survey and about the community response, so over half of the 900 plus residents voluntarily left their email address. So this was an optional spot on the survey. If you wanted, to hear more, hear updates, just generally be informed. Someone could leave their email address, but it was marked very clearly as optional. And in the world of, collecting information and marketing and things like that, email addresses are precious. None of us are giving out our email address all willy-nilly because you just assume, you're going to get 40 spam emails about shoes. You protect your email address. So to see that respondents were so engaged to be willing to share that information is really just a testament to the type of community you all have here. And I just wanted to flag it because it's not something that you see every day. Okay, and last but not least, This is self-explanatory here. At the end of the survey, respondents were asked to answer if they were in favor of the project. After reviewing the surveys, as sort of the bookend at the start, you say, you know, what's your kind of feeling on this with your basic understanding, and then you review the history, answer your questions, see some financial information, and then how do you feel at the end of it, just to have that contrast. So you were at about a 75 to 25 split once your survey closed. And then of those in favor, they were presented with an additional prompt to note opinions on building uses based on some of the proposed uses in the supplemental materials that already existed. This was pretty cool. By and far most popular in here was communal activity space and event and performance space, and everything else really fell much further down. So that's just an interesting note on, you know, opinions and potential needs of people responding. So that is it for me for your main pieces of the survey response. And as someone who has never actually been to Bradley Beach, it was really a pleasure to learn a bit about the borough and the very stellar engagement that you all have. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Miranda. So we'll open it to the council for some any clarifying questions you might have about the survey or any information. Council President.
Miranda, hi, I'm Al Gubitosi, and I very much appreciated your presentation tonight. Thank you. And I also have a strong appreciation for how challenging it is to construct a survey, especially one that, you know, I'm sure you're trying to make it as limited and biased as possible, you know, to get a really objective perspective on the world you're surveying. I guess I have a handful of questions. As you're aware, the members of the council were not involved at all in developing the survey. So some of these are just questions I have that I would have asked if, you know, if I was participating in the actual development. So the first one is really simple. I know we had 900 plus responses. How many total surveys how many cards were sent? You know, what did we expect? Is that a 30% response rate, 50%?
You're talking about postcards?
Well, I mean, I don't know, what's your measure for, do you have any way to determine how many responses you receive compared to?
We have, so digitally, we can kind of say, oh, okay, we had like a 61% response rate of people who landed on the survey homepage. So that is really, that comes from how many times it was shared on social media, how many times it was privately shared, things like that. So for that gauge, it's not going to be super exact because it's really based on how many eyeballs made their way to that survey homepage and then started it and then completed it. I don't know, I wasn't really involved with there was a printed postcard sent out. So while I helped with, you know, getting that together, I wasn't involved with the direct mail piece of that. So I wouldn't be able to comment on, you know, if there was a X number of postcards were sent and how that compares to the number of responses. I think that can be done. I just, you know, I don't have access to you guys's direct mail taxpayer list.
No, and maybe I was being too technical. At a very, very super high level, you know, we have relatively speaking 4,000 residents. We got 900 responses. Is it as simple as saying a little less than 25%? I mean, do you think all residents received an opportunity to vote on this?
you have to break out kids out of that number. Kids didn't participate.
So if we had, again, I'm still just looking for a general number of how many folks of the folks we attempted to reach, how many responded? It
Yeah,
sounds
I wouldn't be able to give you an exact number. I can definitely say you had a healthy response, but I'd have to bug somebody about the number of postcards that were returned and things like that. Which is
Okay.
possible.
If we have 4,000 residents, we break out, and I'm making up numbers, but just for purposes of example, 500 kids. I could pick a number, it doesn't matter, but if there's 3,500 or 3,200, whatever the leftover adults are, would it be fair for us to say that we got 900 responses out of the remaining adults, 30,000 something adults?
Sure. I mean, I don't, yeah, from like a high level, from a high level perspective, I think that's fine, given the nature of the survey and how it's not never going to be super exact.
You were saying, and again, I appreciate you coming in as an expert to help the borough, but you were saying that you don't really know a lot about Bradley. So can you just share with all of us just who provided most of the guidance to you? It was the resident volunteers, correct?
Yeah, we had it was a committee of like 6 people or so who I guess had been previously involved in discussing the community center and the possibilities and things like that. I would have probably received, like the administrative piece of it. I talked to Kim a lot. But yeah, I would say all of the context would have come from that resident group. And I'm not aware of, I wasn't aware of where any of them stood on, this project, but they were a very good group.
But they were the ones asking you to put in the financial details and the comparison of the different projects. I'm just trying to understand how it came together.
Yeah, I think, well, for the tax implications, that was always going to be part of the goal of the survey. So that would have come from the borough to say, we have this analysis and how do we approach it? How do we make people aware of this? And then I would go from that and say, well, you need to put in a question about taxes and things like that. And then I would request the actual content and say, what can you give me that I can try to digest and understand? Because what I do is take something that already exists, which in that case is the that independent analysis, and then look at it and say, how do we structure this in a way that that people can find approachable? So that part would have actually come from me.
And the taxpayer cost, you said that came from the borough, or I think you said there was a third party that pulled together a table.
It was a combination of Acacia and HFA. Acacia did all the bond work. That's our bond analysis services person, and HFA is our financial services. So they worked in concert for, I don't know, it was a week or 3 to 5 days. Put that together.
Okay, and one of the things that struck me on the survey, and I really appreciated your opening comments. You mentioned how important it is to keep things simple. And in fact, the one I participated in the survey, and I loved the smiley face slide, because to me nothing's simpler than pick the smiley face or frowny face that best resembles what you think of this project. But I was struck just contrasting that to so much of the intricate detail that was included, the tax information. Was that just, I mean, was there any way to simplify that detail financially to make it a little more of a smiley face level of comprehension, or was that about the best we could do to condense the data?
I mean, some of it depends on if we had maybe spent another couple of weeks trying to play with it, maybe we could have gotten to an even more simplified place. I don't think that it would have been easy to get there. There's only so much that you can lose before you start muddying up what you're trying to convey. So I would say that we did have an additional tax-related FAQ one-pager that was added into the supplements that had a little bit more information on it, I believe. And that was sort of the additional piece of it that people could go in and see that, and they could also go in and see the full budget download. And I think, again, it also goes back to being, this is a high-level survey, and we're not trying to conduct a focus group or a research study, which would be great. That would be like a dream, but that's not in the cards in terms of timing and resources and things like that.
Okay, thank you. I have no further questions. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Miranda, again, thank you very much. If anybody does have questions, anybody on Zoom or in the audience, what's the email address?
Oh, council comments and questions at bradleybeachnj.gov.
And we'll, Bree and Kim will be happy to respond to any questions. Not Bree, I'm sorry, Miranda. I saw Bree walk out the door. Bree, you don't want to answer questions on a survey.
No, I would go anything to say that.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, yeah, Miranda, you did good. Your diaphragm held up. You breathed very well. So we appreciate you coming in, and good luck going forward.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, the lights. Everybody swim. Okay, the last year or so, there's been a tremendous amount of discussion in the state of New Jersey post Hurricane Ida on stormwater utility, stormwater management. Last February, in the League of Municipalities, New Jersey League of Municipalities magazine, there was an article written about stormwater utilities. It was written by the person who's going to present here today, Bree Callahan. Bree did meet with the administration a few times because we were curious about what benefits we could derive from stormwater utility. Just recently, there's been grant money freed up, so we can actually do a study basically for free, assessing if we want to embark on this or not. I'll just give you a quick intro on Bree, and then I'll let her take the floor. She's a stormwater manager. She works to help local governments and utilities create stormwater utilities more affordably and effectively to reduce flooding and improve water quality. Responsible for creating a web-based resource center, organizing training resources, facilitating peer-to-peer network with local officials. Prior to then, Bree is a employee of New Jersey Future. She served as executive director and Baykeeper for Massachusetts Baykeeper, and works as a legal and environmental consultant in both Philly and Boston. She's earned her JD from Villanova and holds a BA in architecture and environmental studies from UPenn. And I think at one point played a little softball. So as I recall.
My blood had to be up.
Yes. So with that, I'll turn it over to Bree, and this is, as I said, it's informational. Did any of the environmental committee get this? Say, maybe they're on we invited them also. But this is recorded, and we'll make sure that they get it if they're not on. And Bree, can take the floor.
Sure. So I'm going to try and go at a trick of putting slides up at the same time as in here and chatting with you all. And I'm not really sure if it's going to work, but Mike's got some handouts for everybody. Erica, do I need to be like a co-host or something?
Don't think so.
Is it really?
On the slide, it's slippery. I greased it.
Oh, so you're online.
Yeah. Everybody can see.
Okay,
There we go.
there we go.
Okay, great.
Erica, you just gotta do the right.
Oh, goodness. Okay, sorry.
Okay, so feel free to interrupt me Happy to answer any questions from anybody. Here, I'm gonna pull this up here so I can actually do the alert. So my name is Britt Callahan. I'm with New Jersey Future. We're a nonpartisan, nonprofit organization based out of Trenton, New Jersey. And we work primarily on land use and water infrastructure issues. So you may have seen some of the work that we do with lead pipes and a lot of land use planning. We advocate for places where everybody can be healthy and vibrant and, you know, economically viable. And I love what I do. So what I'm here to talk to you about tonight, I work primarily on Stormwater Utility, which is basically a funding mechanism for the stormwater issues that you have. So right now, we can talk a little bit about current stormwater funding practices, then I'll go into what a stormwater utility actually is, what other municipalities are doing about stormwater investigations in New Jersey, and then talk a little bit about the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection's Stormwater Utility Feasibility Study, and that is a mouthful, but it's a grant. It's a no-cost grant that just came out a couple of weeks ago, which I am super excited about. I don't know why I wrote on this, but it is easily orange line. Okay, so right now, the way it works in most municipalities, and I believe that's the way it works here, is that stormwater, street sweeping, things like that, is all basically taken out of your property taxes or sewer fees. So you're paying for all of those operations and maintenance, and also capital projects and things like that from the general, from property taxes and from sewer fees. And so with what the mayor was talking about, with the increased storms and all the flooding that we've been seeing, what are your options to deal with stormwater? Well, you could do nothing, but in many cases, folks are dealing with problems like, you know, we mentioned flooding, water quality issues, when you're right here in on the ocean, you know, public safety issues, business interruption. These are some of the things that we're seeing municipalities that are really trying to figure out how to manage their stormwater, because it's becoming more and more of a problem. So you can do nothing. You can increase property taxes, you can increase sewer rates, or you can create a stormwater utility. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what the benefits are for creating a stormwater utility. So first, what is a stormwater utility? Similar to a water or sewer utility or any other utility, or electric, gas, it's a local assessment district dedicating funding specifically and solely to address stormwater issues. And the legislation in New Jersey basically says that it only can be, the utility can only be collected for stormwater purposes. It can't be paid for through anything else. So probably wondering, is this a common thing? It is. There's 2,000 stormwater utilities throughout the country. You can see on the maps on the left, that's what it looked like across the country in 2009. And this is what it looks like in 2019. Our data is a little bit off because of the pandemic. But basically there's about 2,000 utilities across the United States. And the darker the blue color, the more intense the blue color, the more utilities there are. So you can see it's increased. What's interesting to note about this, and from the maps, what I wanted to take away is that it really is not red states or blue states. It's not it's not based on population. It's not based on geographic location. It's really based on folks wanting to and needing to manage their stormwater. So you can see there's 184 on the map on the right in Florida. There's 114 in Texas. You're talking, you know, West Coast up in, you know, in the Great Lakes area. So I think the smallest one is an 88-person utility in Florida, and built in Florida, and the largest one is in Los Angeles, and that's over 3 million people. So it really knows no bounds. It's based on what your community really is looking to do. So in New Jersey, backing up a little bit, our law is permissive, meaning that it's a tool that allows us to do this. It's not something that we're required to do. It allows, but doesn't require local governments to establish a stormwater utilities. And if it's established, it can be established by one municipality, it can be established by multiple municipalities, it can be established by sewer and improvement authorities. There's a lot of flexibility in how they can be established. Once they are established, the idea to collect fees based on the amount of hard surfaces or hardscapes on a particular property. So it's really based on your usage of the stormwater management system. The funds generated, and I mentioned this a few seconds ago, the funds generated from these fees are dedicated solely to stormwater management and can't be used or diverted to anything else. That's it, just for stormwater. So what are the key attributes for a stormwater utility? Why do people do this? Why are there 2,000 of them across the United States? Well, they're widely seen as the most equitable. Everyone is assessed. There is no exemptions, except in the state of New Jersey, we have one exemption for agriculture, active agriculture or horticultural land. So anything taxed under the Farmland Preservation Act. So any large parking lots, any large warehouse rooftop spaces, they would be paying based on the amount of hard surfaces that they have. So right now, it's based on property taxes, which is not based on how much impervious cover or how much hardscape you actually have.
Could I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
So roads, state and county roads, are they exempt?
No.
They're not.
You may charge the state, may charge the federal government, whatever kind of roads you have. Now you have to figure out whether that's something that you actually want to do. And that's where, and I'll talk a little bit in a second about what a feasibility study
Right.
really helps you figure out.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. The other thing is that it's dedicated, so you know you're constantly getting this source of funding, and it's not going to be, like I mentioned, diverted anywhere else. It's stable, so it's consistent. You know you can plan ahead for capital projects. You know you can plan ahead for your operations and maintenance for the year, and that's a nice thing. And like I said, the sole exemption is for agriculture and horticultural actively under the Farmland Preservation Act. So this is my favorite part. What can it pay for? What can you use a utility for? You can actually pay for the establishment of the utility itself. You can pay for capital projects. So that can be any of the, pipe replacement. It can pay for any green infrastructure that you're trying to implement. It can pay for operations and maintenance, which would include any of the street sweeping or any of the requirements that you have under your current municipal separate storm sewer permits. The MS4 permits obligations would be an allowable expense under the stormwater utility. You can pay for asset management, so trying to figure out what assets you have, and then trying to figure out how to keep them up and running to top conditions. That's part of it. And then any public outreach and education, that's also part of the MS4 obligations. And that's one thing that I did want to point out. The MS4, which is the municipal separate storm sewer permit, is going to be updated in January 2023, I believe. And with it comes a whole new set of obligations that municipalities are going to have to comply with. One of those is called the Watershed Improvement Plan. It's a brand new portion, and I can speak more about that. That's a separate discussion. But basically the permits are all going to require more obligations by a municipality. And it can pay for a whole bunch of other things, including like snow removal. That's another allowable expense. Okay, just to kind of drive the point home to get folks to understand what the difference is and why folks are thinking about a stormwater utility instead of just raising taxes or raising sewer fees, is because with a stormwater utility, since it's based on the apportionment, the amount of impervious cover that you have, it really makes a difference as opposed to just having general taxes. This is a slide from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. If you take a look on the left, it's what their fee distribution was based on the wastewater flow. And you can see the residential customers were paying 48% of the stormwater, whereas the non-residential, so parking lots, the corporations, they were paying 52%. When they actually based it on impervious cover with a stormwater utility, that dropped down significantly, and the residential customers were actually only paying 23% of the stormwater costs versus the 48% that they already had. So that's why a lot of folks are transitioning to this stormwater utility. Okay, anybody have any questions before I move on? The neat thing about the legislation with New Jersey legislation is that it requires credits. So anybody who manages stormwater on their particular property, if you put in a rain garden, or if you put in some other, gray or green infrastructure, you're required to have credits from the municipality. And each municipality figures out their own credit system. They figure out how they want to, what reductions in the cost would want to be. So basically, what happens is if you put and you manage stormwater on your own property, your actual fee would be reduced. So you can kind of manage, and there's a lot of things where municipalities can do grant programs or things like that, where, if you have a grant program for rain barrels, that would help, and folks install them, that would help reduce their stormwater fee. That makes sense? Okay. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about the process. You guys are kind of already part of the way there. Yeah, this yellow or orange line is driving me nuts. So there are a few basic steps for establishing a stormwater utility. You talk through with local officials. As Mayor already mentioned, we've had a couple conversations already just to get an idea of what this actually is and what it would mean. The point where you really are now is, whether you want to look into it even further and look into a feasibility study. And that's sort of where get a consultant to come take a look and see, what the logistics would be, what the specifics would be. And the great thing right now is that Njdep is actually offering no cost consultant technical assistance. So they actually do it for no cost, which is really great. And then there's ongoing stakeholder and outreach activities, and then figure out whether or not it actually makes sense for the municipality or not. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It all depends on what it comes down to with the final numbers. And these are the sort of questions that you answer ahead of time, you bring to the consultant, and then you figure out what the, like I said, more of the specifics are. So what are the problems facing your community? Do you have a ton of flooding? Do you have particular areas that you're having trouble with? Is it water quality issues? You're having trouble meeting any of your obligations under your MS4 permits? What are your community's goals? Are the things that you're not getting to? Are you not getting to all of the street sweeping that you need to get to? Are you not getting to cleaning the catch basins? And then whether or not you need a different structure, whether there are more resources that you need, and what the actual cost of inaction is. Because there's a whole bunch of things, and Mike had some brochures that talk about if you're not managing your stormwater, some of the costs that folks don't consider is the cost of increased insurance, business interruption. There's all sorts of other costs that go into managing stormwater, and why it makes sense to upgrade your stormwater management systems. Okay, so currently, right now, before the Njdep, before the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection grant opportunity, we had over 50 municipalities reach out to us to talk about stormwater utilities. Of those 50, 9 of them have already started doing stormwater utility feasibility studies. And they particularly are looking into it because of the flooding issues, because of infrastructure needs. They might have some things that are crumbling, falling apart, and they need to replace things. And then water quality concerns are another big issue. So that's kind of where we are right now. The Njdep grant opportunity, I mentioned a couple of times, it's stormwater utility feasibility study technical assistance grant. The municipality wouldn't have to lay anything out. It's a no cost grant. There are experts, national experts, who are on retainer for DP. It's a very simple application. You have to do a letter of interest, and that's basically it. There are a couple of components in that letter of interest, and there's no specific additional filing or anything like that. Take a look, and then the DEP will contact you based on and match you up with the consultant that they, that makes sense for you based on what your needs are.
And Bree, that That date on there, September, my confused, because I thought that.
It was, I yelled at them,
Yeah.
so they extended it.
They pushed it out.
They
Okay.
pushed it out, yeah.
We've been kind of busting with, our stormwater engineer, Remington, Remington.
Yeah. It was really hard. We have so many municipalities who are looking into this grant that August is such a quiet month for folks that it was really hard to get council meetings and, approvals and folks to understand. So they pushed it out until,
So we actually might be ahead of the curve. here.
I think you guys are.
It's a Christmas miracle.
Yeah. So, yeah, so it's a good opportunity for municipalities to explore but not have to pay the heavy price tag. Yeah. Anybody have any questions about utilities? That is, yes.
So the grant is actually just like we're being told to come here to examine our sewers or stormwater and actually see if we need a fund, any utility, or they actually say like, oh, you don't need a utility. Or is it to establish how much a utility you need? Like, what are they actually going to tell us?
So what they'll do, well, this is kind of interesting, what they'll do is take a look at the stormwater system. They'll do an impervious cover analysis, which is really helpful. The current data that we have at the state is from 2015, which is very outdated. And so at the very least, you'll have an updated GIS layer of your impervious cover. But basically what they do is they'll do that analysis and take a look at what the needs are. So what the municipality needs, what things are falling apart that need to be replaced. It'll help put, it'll help put into perspective like what a plan would be for replacing, like down the line. I was talking about asset management. They'll give you a sense of what you should be doing. But it really is dependent upon what, what mayor and council and DPW or whoever your, core crew is looking for. So it takes into all those questions, based on what the municipality needs.
And then who establishes the fees? Like,
So-
it's not a tax, it's considered a fee,
Right,
right?
it's considered a user fee, and so the municipality working with the consultant doesn't establish anything. The municipality would have control over that. Same thing with the credit, the municipality would help figure out basically how much money it would cost to run the borough like you want to run it stormwater wise and address all the problems. And many municipalities don't tackle the whole thing all at once. They'll tackle, certain pieces of it and then build on it from.
And last question,
Yeah.
we don't have to, right?
No.
Like, it's not like a federal thing that they make, right?
No.
Okay,
No, it's permissive. The state says, hey, this is the tool you can use.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
Sure, the state guidelines do allow the county to do this also.
yes.
So do we know where Monmouth County is on this right now?
Not very far.
Okay, so, is there a chance that we could have a utility, they could have a utility, they could tax us, and then we would tax?
There wouldn't be
them?
multiple.
Okay.
There wouldn't
that's-
be multiple. The difficulty with the regional, and regional makes a whole lot of sense from a watershed perspective, but ideally, problem is getting all the folks in the county to agree and to, kind of get that all situated. If you have problems now, it's not, you have to get everybody to agree on like a specific plan.
It currently works for freehold soils and soils preservation. I would think it would work with this also.
Yeah, we haven't had any interest from Monmouth County. There are a couple of counties that we have had interest from. But yeah, I haven't seen anything from Monmouth.
Thank you.
But yes, it does make a lot of sense. Yes.
As a homeowner,
Mhm.
I just renovated the house.
Mhm.
I took all my stormwater runoff from the house when I put drywall.
Okay.
I have no stormwater accessing the public. Is that considered a credit to the
So
town?
you would be credited for the things that you did prior to the utilities formation. And then it's not a complete, it can't be a complete credit, like 100% credit, because the roads we drive on, all
Sidewalks,
right, sidewalks, everything. But yeah, absolutely. Anything that's pre-existing would be considered in the credit reduction.
And does the town have an opportunity going forward as different projects are entertained of controlling the stormwater better to credit back to the town? Hardscape putting in some kind of a runoff system that goes underground.
Yeah, so there are gonna be new stormwater rules, so that's for the state that are gonna be required. I'm not totally sure how that's gonna line up with the MS4 permit that I was talking about. And that's also gonna be kind of wrapped into another New Jersey Protect Against Climate Threat, another law that's coming out. But yes, to answer your question, that's gonna be something that's gonna be required. So it's gonna be something that the municipality is gonna have to consideration anyway. Yeah, no problem. Sure.
So does the stormwater utility factor in each residential property based on the impervious coverage?
Yes,
So that's how it's kind of assessed, because the sewer utility is not based on
right.
usage and output at all. It's not based on your water consumption and therefore your water output.
Yeah, so the law explicitly says that it has to be based, each fee has to be based on the amount of hard surfaces. And it would have to, that's what the consultant data layer that I was talking about, they would be doing that GIS information so that would inventory all the property owners.
You said the new requirements are gonna be coming out possibly in January of 23. So, I mean, for our perspective, would it even talk about this being, once again, putting the cart before the horse to know, is that we have to address or not address, when we don't even know what the new requirements are gonna be?
We actually do know what the requirements are gonna be. The permit came out, the draft permit came out last week, and they're gonna sign it into law. So you're gonna have to start complying in January 2023.
Do you have any sense of what some of those changes are?
Yes. I don't have a list of them right now, but there's a whole bunch.
Yeah, but recognize it's something we're gonna do a feasibility study and snap our fingers and get into this. This would be a referendum, information, it's a whole process.
Feasibility studies themselves also take like time. They take, some of them have taken, 9 to 18 months. So it takes a while.
No, I think for us, it's just more, I would say residents are more concerned just about throwing money at yet another study or something that we may or may not.
Right.
That's all I'm looking at.
Well, that's the thing. That's why the DEP doing it for free
Yeah.
is such a huge thing, because those studies are really expensive. They could be between $20,000 and $100,000, but if DEP is gonna do it.
So that's really why we jumped on when this came out. 6 weeks or so ago, we jumped on it and said, if we can do this for free, we'll have a body of information. And we can, we can figure it out as we go. It's not, this isn't a like boom, boom, boom deal. This is gonna take some time.
Sorry, I got one more question.
Sure.
That had to deal with impervious coverage. Who sets the standard for impervious coverage? Because I know certain towns, like Neptune, they don't count a pool as impervious coverage, while Bradley counts a pool as impervious coverage. Who sets the standard for that?
So for the stormwater utility, it would be the municipality. They would decide, they get to decide pretty much all the specifics. The law is super flexible.
Okay.
So they can decide what sort of infrastructure, and really that was set up so that you're not spending more money than you need to. It was set up so that you can use the current infrastructure that you already have.
We're gonna, council, any questions?
Just a quick one. Conceptually, I could see a lot of value in trying to restructure Texas to allocate to the users, so to speak, or the users. But conceptually, it strikes me that this would be ultimately a bit of a cost shift more towards commercial, just like that pie chart you showed us.
Yes, it would be a shift to folks that have more impervious surface. But if they're doing reductions and they're managing stormwater on their property, and a lot of them are gonna be required to do that with the new stormwater laws that are coming down from the Department of Environmental Protection. So, yeah, absolutely, it's gonna shift from, it's gonna shift to more of the more impervious surface.
And I think I already know the answer to this question, but you showed that the one example, who was it,
Harrisburg.
When Harrisburg instituted that tax or that fee structure, was there a corresponding reduction in the taxes, real estate taxes?
I'm not sure about Harrisburg. In some places there has been throughout the country, but typically they're doing this because they don't have the money. So it all depends on what the municipality wants to do and how they wanna ship things. Yeah,
That's why it's gonna take a lot of thinking this through.
Yeah.
But getting the study kind of free and using the resources. I think it's possible. So, okay. We thank you very much for stopping in.
no, I don't
I
think.
introduce Mike Beeson. Mike works with Grade. Mike is an Ocean County, Ocean Township, Monmouth County guy, so.
Well, I just want to mention too that all any landowner, the nonprofit, no matter what, has to, under this is has to pay the fee.
Yeah.
Okay,
But the fee structure can be,
You can make it whatever you want.
redevelop the fee structure, so it can be, you know.
Yeah.
and the other thing that I didn't mention too, for financial purposes, it's outside of the 2% cap.
Right.
So if you're up against the 2% cap, all of the, like operations and maintenance stuff that would be currently under the 2% cap would be taken out and put into the utility. So it helps when folks are up against the 2%.
Yeah, so things like snow.
And yeah, and street sweeping.
That's the simplest example, I think, if it's out there.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you for your safe trip home.
Thanks.
That's fine. Okay, we'll move into the rest of the agenda. We're doing pretty good for time. The first thing we have is approval of minutes, the July 2022 council business meeting minutes. Make a motion to approve those on the second.
Public comments on 319 Lorraine.
That's next. Second.
Mr. Bennell?
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose?
Yes.
Mr. Sexton?
Abstain.
Mr. Weber absent, Mayor Fox.
Yes. Okay, next agenda item is public comments, 5-minute limit and single answer per speaker pertaining to this agenda, the agenda items on this meeting only. So, any questions on the agenda? Yes.
Shauna Greenblatt, 414 Monmouth Avenue.
Monmouth Day. 413. That's us.
Got a little mute going on here.
So I'd like to address the 319 Lorraine survey and the process. So if you could just clarify this, the survey was, the purpose of the survey was to get a gauge on the community feelings about the 319 Lorraine, is that correct?
That was, you know,
Because it's my understanding that there was actually a portion of the community that did not receive the survey, that there were a lot of renters who may well be registered voters who didn't have a chance to chime in. I mean, where was there a mailing list that was drawn from?
yeah, and not only was there a mailing list, but, well, a couple things I can address it. Number one, we met with the postmaster before the survey went out and changed our addressing process to say or resident. We did not receive any returns. I didn't want to quote the number, but the number's either 2,000 or 2,500 postcards that went out. In addition to that, we used the process of newsletters, website, any number of things to say, you can, you know, here's the QR code, you know, so there was no attempt to preclude anybody. We wanted to include everybody, and I did hear a few people say that renters didn't get it, but it wasn't like a outcry or anything significant that I heard.
Okay, so I mean, really, yeah.
Just to follow up, I actually spoke with the postmaster today to confirm. He said the mailing list was based on tax, property tax records. So renters would not show up in the property taxes. It would not have been. That's what we called today.
That's not correct. We provided the list as a combination of property tax owners and anybody with COs from we got from community development. So it was a combination list that we received. We provided the list to them. They didn't develop the list. We did.
What he shared with me, I'm just repeating because I was curious, was one address. So if there was a property with a back house or 2 apartments on it, that got one postcard, that property of 3 units. So that if those other 2 units were rent or occupied, according to the postmaster, he said they would not have received it.
And multi-unit buildings?
According to my conversation today, and Mr. Mayor, you know, if you have additional information that we could share, great. But at least per my conversation, he said it was very inconsistent across the multi-unit.
So, I mean, the reason I'm asking the question is that, you know, we have the survey is kind of preempting what is, we're going forward with a referendum, which is for only registered voters in the borough. Right, so really the survey was to really get a whole community gauge of the church based on one figure, the $10 million figure. So in that respect, I just have to say personally, I found I was really disappointed because it didn't give us an opportunity to really support the church and be financially responsible about our spending. So by only giving one option of a $10 million restoration of this potential community resource, you know, what happened was it really just garnered a negative response. And that's exactly what we see in the survey. And this survey now is informing the referendum that's coming out. So I really feel that there was a manipulation by having the survey come out, by giving the community really only one option. I was asked the question in the survey, which I had a hard time answering. Do I support a community center in Bradley Beach with this 319 Lorraine property and at a $10 million figure? Well, honestly, my answer is no, not at a $10 million figure, but it didn't give me the opportunity to say what I feel, which is that I really think this is a resource that we should do what we can to restore in Bradley Beach. You know, it's an historical structure. We don't have very many real historical structures of architectural integrity that tell the story of Bradley Beach. And if we lose this building, then we likely just, it becomes a residential property, you know, divided into 4 parts. You know, of new construction. So, you know, I really feel that we're being robbed of the opportunity to support this church by putting such a high cost figure on the church. And, you know, another question that I had was about the tax implications and what it was based on. Was it based on a 30-year bond loan? That was not made clear in the survey. It was basically a 10-year projection of cost to the taxpayer, but it really didn't indicate the loan terms, which clearly makes a difference. Was it based on a 10-year? So
No, it wasn't based on 10 years. It goes out.
Yes, it was.
No, it wasn't.
So whether it was or wasn't, what I'm suggesting is that there are some things that have been unfortunately the community is not really given an opportunity to respond to salvaging, saving, restoring an important building while also being mindful of economics. And I think that was also, you know, made clear in the list of priorities that were listed of what some of the things that need to be done in Bradley Beach. Some of those things were maintenance things. Some of those things have their own utilities. You know, there's a sewer utility. I just think that it was really used to skew the results. So the public would say, no, this is too much money to spend. And then what might ultimately happen, because I'm assuming that the results of a non-binding referendum, I think based on what we saw in this survey and the way the survey was presented, is really just going to entree right into a no vote on the referendum. And then whatever that means with the responsibility of the mayor and council to make a decision on this property. And then we may lose a treasure. Once it's gone, it's gone. So I just have to say, as a resident, I'm just really disappointed with this process.
Thank you. Yeah.
Jackson Temple, 103 Fourth Avenue. First of all, I'd like to second the previous speaker. Terrific questions. But let me ask you this. How many registered voters are there in Bradley Beach?
Oh, the number is about 2,700-ish.
About that.
I don't have it right in front of me.
I don't either. Yeah, I apologize.
Right.
I don't have it right in front of me, but he's right. It's that 27. It's 27
Oh,
something
I heard
for
it.
that.
How many postcards? You said there were 2,500 postcards went out, sent out.
It's either 2,025.
Okay. And 970. You had 970 responses, electronic or postcards, right?
935.
935, okay. How many of those 935 were returned by the postcards?
None, it was all electronic. Maybe I didn't understand.
No. You answered it. Okay, so they didn't have to stipulate that they got a postcard.
Oh, no.
So you don't know.
No, I
Right.
didn't know that.
Okay,
We could have asked the question, did you get a postcard, but we didn't ask that question.
right. Okay. That's it for now.
Raise my hand. Just a minute.
Yes. Sorry.
Sorry, I think maybe you're, sorry. Okay, any other questions on the agenda? Yes.
Thomas J. Joanne, 612 Third Avenue. I'm glad Mr. Cannon's here. Mr. Cannon, this is about the executive session again. So today, the resolution 2022-217, it calls out for the disposition of a public property in closed session. So you're looking to sell public property. We've been down this road before, Mr. Cannon. Okay, the statute does not say that you can sell property in closed session. It says that you can purchase with public funds.
So your lawsuit about this last time was about the purchaser being there, right? Okay, the purchaser's not here this time.
Okay.
Meeting advising the governing body on their legal options for disposing of property. Perfectly legal.
But there's no reason it can't be done here. This property is a very small property. It can only be purchased by neighbors who actually abut the property. This can be an open public process. The assessor is going to determine what the sale price is. I mean, this is a common thing with paper streets and everything else. Every time I've seen it done, it's been done in public.
So it's going to be a public process, but we've never done this with this governing body. So I'm going to explain to them the legalities, how this works and how you have to treat people equally in a situation where it's a non-conforming lot and all the stuff that you obviously already know, but I'm not sure that all my clients know. And I don't talk to my clients out from the public. So we're not making any decisions about the property or anything, but there might very well be public action after that to see if they want to dispose it.
Well, then I do wish you were the attorney when the property at Giuliano's was given to the developer with no
I wish
consideration.
I was too.
That would have been very helpful. I do have a couple comments on 319. The items that were needed to be repaired and maintained that were on the wish list was said to us by Ms. Humphrey that she added that. But she said that at the same meeting, Mayor, where you said nobody put their thumb on the scale. But yet, when you add that, you put your thumb on the scale. Now, tonight, Miss Miranda Nash said that she worked with the residents and Miss Humphrey. So clearly, somebody's thumb was on the scale.
I'll clarify your point on the question.
No, she clarified it. You don't have to
No,
clarify.
oh, no, I will clarify the point because you're misstating something. The projects that were provided on that survey did not come from the residents. They came from Ms. Humphreys.
Exactly. That's exactly what I said. And that means someone had their thumb on the scale because those had no correlation at all to the church property. They're separately funded, they're separate projects, and it's from the misadministration of the town for so long is why they need work done on. So that's one thing. The other thing is that it is a 10-year payment schedule on a 40-year improvement. Okay, now you don't take a 10-year mortgage on a house that'll be there for 40 years.
Not the way it
It absolutely is. So you stand corrected on that. Thank you.
They don't stand correct.
Yes, you do.
Sure, sorry. Yes. No, no.
Yeah. No, after you, no. Twice. Dr. Tom McGuire, 610 Brindley Avenue. I just have a question. You said that the postcards, that the postmaster said no postcards were returned back. They all went out.
Very few have been, yes.
So some did get few.
Very, very few. The reason we went to the postmaster was earlier this summer, we sent out an update to called Blue Sheet, trash recycling, et cetera. We got about 200 back. And I just said that's not acceptable. So we met with the postmaster and he provided us, this is the way we should address things so that everything gets full.
So when you say a few, we're talking like 20, 30, something like that.
Probably less. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yes.
On the Champion 411.5 Lorraine Avenue. I'd like to some comments on 319. At the June council meeting where you had the engineers and architects here, I asked specifically whether the mechanical, electrical and plumbing report or analysis had been made public. And you stated that it had, Mayor, and that it in fact was on the website. It never has been on the website. It is not on the website now. And because of that, about 6-7 weeks ago, I put in an Oprah asking for all email correspondence, reports, analysis, everything to do with 319, going back basically to the beginning. I put the borough to work, trying to dig these up and get them to me. I finally received them and found that they were largely incomplete. I received email correspondence that had attachments that were some of these reports and analysis. The attachments were not included. And among those were one of the most important ones, which was the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing analysis. And the reason that that's important is that 1/3 of the cost of your $10 million happens to be total demolition of mechanicals, electrical, and plumbing, and the complete replacement of them. 1/3. It's not supported by this report, which has never been made public. I'm not trying to get hold of that report. I want to find out the reasoning that the engineers basically decided that apparently all these systems were no good and had to be demolished and replaced totally. I mean, the public needs to know these things. Matter of fact, the council needs to know these things because apparently, from what I've heard, none of the members of the council ever saw this complete report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Else, yes.
Nancy Meadow, Ocean Park condominiums. So I'll start with the short things. On the executive session, it would have been helpful to me if it said more than the lot and the block number, because I'm too lazy to go and do all the research for that. If you want the public to be involved, make being involved accessible.
It's a 13 by 13 piece of property behind the movie theater.
You know, like, thank you, but at the time I was looking at things, I'm like, our property that we own. It would be
According to
nice-
the tax method.
Thank
13
you,
by 13 behind.
but you know, what,
Right, butts up against the movie theater.
I get it. On the bill list, page 4, item 2. Yeah, I wish the BA were here because every time I bring up things about classifications, she says to me, oh, well, we don't have that as something classified, so we can't do it that way. So there's an expense that we've not had for several mayors regarding refreshments for a meeting with the mayor. The good news is the source of the refreshments was the Bradley Beach business, and I think that's fantastic that we support them. The bad news is what meeting, who, what, where, and how, and again, you know, left off of information that the public might like to know. In addition, I don't know why the Special Olympics run, the description said Asbury, Ocean Grove to the Bradley Beach Boardwalk. So I don't even understand why we're passing a resolution, because it's not through the Bradley Beach Boardwalk, it's stopping at the Ocean Grove property. So it kind of doesn't really involve us, and we're just being something ridiculous. I don't understand on the resolution 2022-212, $49,000, we're not going competitive, we're just allowing it. And I don't know of any of us that would do something in our own lives for $49,000 and just make it open, not competitive. In my opinion, it's bad business, and whether or not you, as I've said before, whether or not you're allowed to do something doesn't mean you should do something. And the biggest issue that I've said before, and I so wish Mr. Weber were here, is he can't stand it when I'm redundant. And I've been saying this since January, resolution 2022-211. I appreciate the 4 councilmen that donate their time, which is extraordinarily valuable. However, it's a slap in the face to think that we don't need 2 meetings a month. And you have 1 meeting for August. I notice all the people here, it's a pretty good turnout. 1 meeting for November, 1 meeting for December. You've got Zoom now, you could be on Zoom and be at a meeting, and it just is very evident of the hatred of this administration to the public. It is embarrassing that you choose not to. She's watching. We don't need to have this little side thing that you do every time I speak. So it is not.
I just wanted to explain something about that resolution,
It is.
if you don't mind. In fact, I will pause this. Okay, that resolution, doing a resolution to publish in the paper, so I don't have to continually advertise the meetings every other week is an expense. You know how we do the one resolution in December, which gives you all the resolutions for the year, or all the meeting dates for the year? Okay, well, because we were doing Zoom, because we had a hit with the pandemic, I was posting it every time, so everybody can have the link and all that. Now I'm just gonna post it on the website, so I won't have to post it in the paper. It'll save money, actually.
It's the same point, though. We've been ordinance for 2 meetings a month.
Okay.
They're not scheduled, and it is a slap in the face to the people. I would also underscore that I would think it could be a legal issue. And more importantly, there are 4 councilmen whose terms are ending. I would think that this particular term, you have a lot of unfinished business to do. And I would think that it would be helpful for you to have the 2 meetings. And I think I'll just stand here and let my 5 minutes go down so that perhaps somebody will say something. I got 5 minutes,
You have 1 minute left.
okay?
It's a maximum of 5.
Yes, maximum, thank you.
So I'm allowed my maximum.
So let's move to, is there any other questions on the agenda?
We have Zoom.
Okay, go back to.
Is there anybody out here that has
That's a
any
good thing.
further
Zoom is here.
questions?
They can't see you.
Okay. Yep, so on Zoom land, okay, we have Lauren Edberg. Good evening, Lauren.
Hello, good evening. A quick observation, a quick question, and a request.
Okay, I just need your address.
404.5 Brindley Avenue, Bradley Beach. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mhm.
Yes, the first observation is that I had many neighbors, some renters, a handful of neighbors, let me not exaggerate, that said that they did not get cards. And I actually, to my neighbors who are summer residents a couple doors down, I provided my card for them to be able to answer the survey. Another question, and there were other renters on Brindley Avenue that I spoke to that did not get cards and were not aware of this survey. The other thing that occurred to me is I was very strict with myself in terms of saying I'm the only actual resident in my house. But then I thought, when you're talking about property owners in Bradley Beach, they can have a lot of people that come and stay for a while. Do we have data on how many households and how many adults per household answered that survey?
Yeah, the survey person actually scrubbed the data, and I think there were 8 removals based on her expertise on how to scrub data from survey.
Mayor, I'm sorry. While that is interesting information, that really wasn't the point of my question. I can, if you have 900 responses, say, and that's 450 households in the borough, that's one thing. If you have 900 responses and 6 adults per household have answered, and given their opinion, that's a whole different kind of sampling. So my other question is, there was a point where before the survey was even finished, where you said that X percentage of people said that they understood the consequences to their taxes and it was like the survey wasn't even done and you were privy to information from the survey. And I'm still having a hard time getting my hands around the fact that our council had no input into the making of the survey, and then that they would have no input into the manipulation, presentation, scrubbing of data also gives me a concern.
Oh, I didn't either. So the objective of that was that nobody, none of the governing body had that. I can tell you just one second, and this is out there. Sure, just give me one more second.
Mm-hmm.
God dang. 1 second. Keep hitting the wrong number. 88.2% of the locations that responded were 1, 2, or 3 people. There were very few multiple beyond 3, and actually 2 people were 59.4% of responded locations, and another 16% were 1. So again, I think the survey person has a body of knowledge on how to manage or look at this data, and that's what she did. So she came back and said anything that was abnormal, she scrubbed out. I was not privy to that specific detail.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I think that somebody has had to interact with the people who created the survey in order for the survey to get created. And that did not include anybody but the administration. Then the request that I have actually has to do with the fact, now, if I can confirm one piece of data, it's my understanding that at least 30% of that 10 million in the engineer's report was anticipated possibilities of cost overruns. So really the hard costs were between 6 and 7 million. There were, again, meeting after meeting after meeting where anybody that I know anybody who was there that I heard that supported the project wanted a greatly reduced scale of work. Some because of price and some because it simply isn't desirable in that building. We have had no chance to make a decision, let alone, the citizens of Bradley Beach are looking at a resource that is completely unique. And once it's gone forever. And we've been presented with, at the beginning, it was 3 plans that you stated at the town hall were within 15% cost one with another. To me, that's not the way reasonable people make decisions when they're looking at substantial expenditures. And again, we all argued for way less. And my request is that somehow, some way, our public representatives find a way for the citizens of Bradley Beach to have a reasonable, meaningful choice about what to do with a resource that belongs to them and that is irreplaceable. And at this point, that has not happened, and that won't happen with the resolution that has attached only a $10 million option.
Thank you, your time, you passed your time, so thank you.
Thank you for the extra time, Mayor.
Okay, next we have Don Greenberg.
Hello, Don Greenberg, 302 Park Place Ave. I had a whole speech, but Lauren, Jack, Paul, and Shanna stole my thunder. So without belaboring the point, I will echo what they have said. I'll try to sum it up. A survey with one choice is no choice at all. Okay, the people of this town were not given a choice on the survey because they only had one option. So to me, that's no choice at all. And I think if we're going to do a referendum, there should be a choice. You know, Councilman Bennell had put out some numbers of a much reduced scope of work for the church. Let's use that as well as the 10 million on the referendum. The other thing is, Mayor, you said it wasn't based on a 10-year outcome. I mean, if you do just simple math, you know, 10 million and what's it, 2,500 taxpayers in town? You know, that's $4,000 a taxpayer divided by 10 years is $400 a year. And I think the survey had somewhere $400 to $500 a year for each person's taxes. If you take the 10 million and the 2,500 taxpayers and divide that by 30 years, you come up with a much lower number, about $130, $140 a year. So, I mean, I don't know how it was not 10 years. I mean, is that something you could explain how that was done? How you get 10 million into 10 years and about 2,500 taxpayers? And I mean, 10 million and 2,500 taxpayers, and you come up with $400 to $500 a year, and you don't have it on 10 years? Because the math doesn't seem to work out.
Survey said 700.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Yeah, so again, two companies, one the bonding company and the other the financial services company, worked together. The cost went out into the 2040 something, 20, I can't remember, I don't have the 2034. Do you have any analysis?
Not with me, but that's what it is, I remember.
2032.
It's in the survey.
It was after 2030, could you stop for a second? 2034 is the entirety of the cost goes out into 2040 something. The slice of time that they took was representative and said, you take 2034 and back it up by 10 years. This is the cost didn't fluctuate much each year between principal, interest, maintenance, staffing, those were big costs. So that was the 10-year estimate. The cost of this goes out, it goes out into a couple of decades out.
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't make sense, though. I just did some quick math on my calculator. $15 million divided by 2,500 people is divided by 10 years is $600 a year. So I upped it to 15 million. So I don't know how you're getting these, you know, these figures if it's supposed to be out 40 years of $600 a year. It just doesn't make sense. And again, I just upped it to 15 million.
I didn't say 40 years. It was 30 years, I think, or 25 years, some number.
But it still doesn't work. I just told
That's
you.
fine. If you buy a house for $200,000, you don't pay $200,000.
That's why I upped it to 15 million, Mayor. 15 million divided by 2,500 residents, taxpaying residents, divided by 10 years is $600 a year. So I'm not sure how it wasn't 10 years. Anyway, we'll disagree on this, I'm sure. And the other thing is regarding Paul's Oprah request. I mean, I find it almost criminal that it takes over 30 days for Paul to get the answers that he asked for, which are required in 7. And then he he doesn't get everything that he's supposed to get. I mean, one of the things he didn't get was the contract to buy the church. I mean, if you ask for an Oprah request on any and all documents related to 319 Lorraine Avenue, you would think that would be one of the big ones. So I'm curious if either yourself or Greg can comment on why Mr. Nishamkin didn't get all that he was due under the legal Oprah request.
I have to look at that. I wasn't aware that he didn't get everything he asked for.
The volume of Oprah in this town, Mr. Greenberg, has risen to the point where we have a separate Oprah attorney. So I'm not really familiar with the matter at this point either. I have to check with him.
Thanks, Greg. I assume the Oprah attorney is not in session tonight here?
No, you might be still getting lawyers to be here.
All right, that's pretty much all. Oh, and one last, two last things. I don't know how much time I have, but I think the stormwater utility is a great idea. I think that, you know, as long as it's not going to cost us any money, worst case scenario, we get an overwhelming depth of knowledge from this. Did you say my time's up?
Yes.
Oh, okay. That's my last comment. I think it's a great idea to do the stormwater utility study.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Bob Sorrentino.
Hi, good evening. Bob Sorrentino, 401 Ocean Park Avenue. Mr. Greenberg kind of stole my thunder there. I was going to hit the same 2 points that he hit. So just very quickly, I agree with him on the survey with the 14.5 million. I did the same math when the survey came out, and it came up basically with the exact same number. So I am also a little bit confused because when I answered the survey stating that I understood that slide, I understood it to mean that my taxes, or the mean taxes for the people, would be $700 a year over 10 years to support 319 Lorraine. So, you know, I'm just as confused as he was as far as that goes. So I think we're owed a little bit more of an explanation before the referendum comes out as to how this slide breaks down. The second thing, again, supporting Mr. Greenberg and Mr. Nishamkin, I am shocked that Paul did not receive everything that he asked for. I think that's, I don't know if it was, I want to think it wasn't intentional, but it appears that it was. And
That's
that's
unfortunate you think that.
Thank you for the time.
Never intentionally hold back data from anybody.
Well, maybe not, but it seems that way. That's all I'm saying. Let's have the attorney at the next meeting who released this, or was supposed to release it. I think he should be in the next meeting to explain why Paul did not get it.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Not seeing anybody else. Is there anybody else on Zoom? Lauren didn't take her hand down.
Okay.
I have one.
Name, address.
Yeah, I got you. Serial number, city of agenda, 218 for that.
Sorry.
218 for that. If I recall, back when the survey was being done, Kim had stated that it was going to be very more or less cheap. Do we have an actual cost, or do we know what it actually cost us the first time around?
Yeah, it's on the bill list. On the bill list today, $2,900 for the woman. Right,
Did
it's on the
that.
screen before.
Okay.
There's $1,500 for the accounting firm, for the financials, and there's $11,000 for T&M Associates for the survey. That doesn't include whatever we spent on. No, T&M is not part of it. He's got a bill in the bill list today. T&M is not. It says survey. Well, $11,000. That's not, it has nothing to do with the survey.
So it wasn't as cost effective or cheap as we.
It was 2,900 and 1,500.
Okay, so if theoretically it's around $4,400, and everybody we understand is up in arms about the inadequacies of the survey. Is there any reason why, given this is such a big, important idea, that we just couldn't redo the survey? We couldn't take all the feedback that you've gotten over the past month or so to say, here's where we have some missteps or some, inadequacies of what wasn't addressed, that perhaps we could get a better assessment of what the temperature is for what's really happening with this building. Like I said, I've never had a plus or minus on it. We just moved here a year ago, so I don't have the history with everybody. I don't understand. So, whichever way it goes, it goes. However, it is near and dear. There are lots of opportunities. But yes, we all seem to concur that the survey was flawed and it was guided to one single answer. So if we're all up in arms about that, is there anything we lose other than maybe another $5,000, which we're all probably willing to pay our share, $2 a household, to do it again with a more cohesive or comprehensive set of questions that could truly give the real temperature? Is that something that could possibly entertain?
I have to talk to the administrator and, we've got a referendum coming up.
Well, exactly. I mean, there's a lot at stake. And like I said, I'm neither here nor there about. But I would think to truly, assuage any fears, stop everybody being upset about you're pointing it to this direction, that direction, or you're listening, you're not listening. What is the harm of taking back all the feedback and perhaps doing just a little more comprehensive on it? And then we can put it to bed and say, this is what everybody thinks, this is what not. We're going clear cut into a referendum with all the information we need. And then everybody can, be happy with whatever it is, whether it's we tear it down or we save it. At least we tried to make sure everybody was heard.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, no other questions. We'll move to ordinances. Agenda item 9, bond ordinance 2022-10, bond ordinance providing for improvements of Park Place Avenue Phase 1, appropriating $556 therein, and authorizing the issuance of 362 bond and notice of finance portion of the cost thereof, authorized in and by the Borough of Bradley Beach in the County of Monmouth, New Jersey. I will, in the introduction, open with any council comments. Okay, then I'll make a motion to introduce 2022-08. I'm trying to say 2022-10. Sorry.
Mr. Bennell,
Here.
Mr. Gubatose,
Yes.
Mr. Sexton,
Yeah.
Mr. Weber absent, Mayor Fox.
Yes. Bond ordinance 2022-11, bond ordinance providing for stormwater outfall improvements, appropriating $3.5 million thereof, and authorizing the issuance of $3 million bonds and notice of finance portion of the cost thereof, authorized in and by the Borough of Bradley Beach and County of Monmouth. Open with any council comments.
My other comment before we vote is I was really surprised by the number. The earlier discussion we had helped me understand that this is, or I'll call it almost placeholder number. It's been described that we'll be looking at something at half the amount. So I want that on record when I cast my vote that I would not have been voting for 3.5.
Okay, we'll then close, make a motion of pass 2022-11.
Sorry.
Mr. Bennell,
Yeah.
Mr. Gubatose,
Yes.
Mr. Sexton,
Yes.
Mr. Weber absent, Mayor Fox.
Yes. We'll move now to adoption. We have an ordinance 2022-8, it's ordinance amending Article 2, Federal Commissions, in Chapter 24, Commissions of State, Borough provide general ordinance to approve the Fletcher Lake Commission provide charter. Start with council comments.
I have a brief comment, repeating myself from a few meetings ago when we introduced this ordinance, but I have the pleasure of serving as the liaison for the Fletcher Lake Commission. And this group of 7 or 8 people, did a phenomenal job. A year or so earlier, I actually worked with Silver Lake in a similar process with their commission. And Fletcher Lake did a great job once again. They built some of this charter off of the baseline that Silver Lake provided, but they improvised, they increased some of the protections they wanted for the lake. I thought the team did a great job, and just want to call out Anthony May. I don't believe he's here tonight, but he led the team, the entire team did a great job.
Okay, there's no other comments. I'll close the council comments and make a motion to open 2022. I'm sorry, 2022-8 for public comments.
Mr. Bennell,
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose,
Yes.
Mr. Sexton,
Yes.
Mr. Weber absent, Mayor Fox.
Yes. Are there any public comments on the Fletcher Lake Commission bylaw changes? Okay, there are none, so I'll make a motion to close the adoption hearing and move to approve resolution 2022-8 to a vote. Do I have a second?
Mr. Bennell,
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose,
Yes.
Mr. Sexsmith,
Yes.
Mr. Weber absent, Mayor Fox.
Yes. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to communications, seasonal lifeguard employee memo. It's a promotion to lifeguard captain, Katie Brooke, I'm sorry, chief. Consent agenda, we'll move to consent agenda. We've got a few items on there. I'll just read them quickly. 2022-05 is the bill list for August 23rd, 2022-206 is authorizing new funding amount of $10 for overpayment of a mercantile license fee to Master Ray Flores Karate. 2022-07 authorizing special Turkey Dash 5K race for Saturday, November 19th, 2022, 2022-208 approving the limited brewery off-premise event permit ABC application for CE LLC, Valley Beach Latin Fest on September 18th, 2022. And 2022-209 authorized refund sewer payment 201 Ocean Avenue Unit 6 in the amount of $595.50. I'll make a motion to approve.
Mr. Mayor, first, I just have a question on the list. Sure. On the second last page, Web Alliance International, we have an invoice to vendor total of $10,000. And I know because I worked with the team, comprised of folks from the strategic task force and others to implement a new website, which clearly has had some challenges, largely because of our poor content. But we just implemented a new website. I'm almost afraid to ask this question, but is this to create a brand new website or pay a new vendor $10,000 after the second page? The web design vendor, whatever it was, $3,500 or so a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And why would we do that without holding the current web designer accountable to fix any glitches?
Because doing the assessment, apparently a number of entities are kind of fleeing from that particular vendor in pretty large numbers because of the design flaws. The current vendor, the web,
Web Alliance International.
Web Alliance, they have a firm that's very aligned to municipal websites. They've been working for probably 3 or 4 months trying to develop this for us, and we're trying to roll something out. Probably in September.
Well, I don't know who's leaving Civic Plus, the current designer, but I know that they worked with Asbury, they worked with Avon, they worked with Belmar, they worked with all of our neighboring boroughs. So if they're all fleeing, I had not heard that, but
I didn't say in particular.
So I didn't have all the clients are fleeing. I guess my concern is just as custodians of the money we spend. If we spend, I think it was $3,500 with the other designer, Civic Plus. I would have thought we should have tried to hold them accountable first or demanded some sort of a refund if they were not delivering the quality product. Are we demanding a refund?
No, nothing new.
And from the beginning, that a number of folks probably in this audience as well as perhaps on Zoom, this over the last year or so, since we implemented this website, the one we have today, Civic Plus, a number of folks have at least raised some concerns regarding Amy Hall as the coordinator operator of the website. They've said that in public meetings,
be careful.
Yeah, I'm not going beyond that. I've defended her because from the beginning, all Amy and I were able to do was design a framework for the website. We needed the borough to load the content, and the borough still has not loaded the content. So to bring in a new web designer and pay $10,000, which I'm estimating is more than 2 times what we paid last designer, well, we still have flawed data. Concerns me. And in fact, if you look at the Fletcher Lake Commission, anyone online wants to look at Fletcher Lake, the chairperson of Fletcher Lake is deceased. But we have still not updated the website. I know members of this audience are looking right at one person who regularly criticized the content. And it just concerns me that we're spending $10,000 when we, the borough, still have not updated the content.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
There is an item on the bill list for Septembrino Architects for $5,600 for community center roof repairs. So we've started spending the $209,000 already?
No, this is the roof repair.
Yeah.
What else?
Oh, okay, so
Just rename that, it says community.
Okay, make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
sorry.
Mr. Bennell?
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose?
I'm going to vote no, because I don't think we should be spending $10,000 on what's that.
Mr. Sexsmith?
Yes.
Mr. Weber absent, Mayor Fox?
Yes. Okay, individual resolutions 2022-10, authorizing extension of due date for the 2022 third quarter real estate taxes. Make a motion to approve 2022-10.
Sorry.
Mr. Bennell?
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose?
Yes.
Mr. Sexsmith?
Yes.
Mr. Weber absent, Mayor Fox?
Yes, 2022-11 designation of accounts for business meeting date for the remainder of 2022. Make a motion to approve 2022-11.
Sorry.
Mr. Bennell?
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose?
Only because I agreed to this already, and I know this is just the restatement, Erica, as you explained, I will vote yes.
Thank you. Mr. Sexsmith?
Yes.
Mr. Weber absent, Mayor Fox?
2022-12 award of non-fair and open contract to H2M Architects Engineers for Center Sewer System CAO. Motion to approve 2022-12. No seconds.
I would second it, but about 3 or 4 months ago, I made the commitment that I was not going to approve any more non-fair and open contracts with this value. It needs to be put out in an RFP, a traditional RFP with competitive bid.
Okay, we're on a second, so we'll move to 2022-213, a resolution providing authorization to apply for and obtain a grant for the American Rescue Plan Firefighter Program. I have to go a second for 2022-213. Second.
Mr. Bennell?
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose?
Yes.
Mr. Sexsmith?
Yes.
Mr. Weber absent, Mayor Fox?
Yes. 2022-214, authorizing the award of emergency procurement for Ocean Park Avenue Stormwater Outfall. Do I have a second for 2022-214? I'm sorry. Sorry.
Mr. Bennell?
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose?
Yes.
Mr. Sexsmith?
Yes.
Mr. Weber? Absent, Mayor Fox, sorry.
Still absent. Yes. 2022-215, authorizing Remington and Burnick engineers to file a grant application on behalf of the Borough of New Jersey Stormwater Competitive Grant Program. Make a motion to approve 2022-215. Second.
Mr. Bennell?
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose?
Yes.
Mr. Sexsmith?
Yes.
Mr. Weber absent, Mayor Fox?
Yes. 2022-216, approving a temporary closure of the Marine Avenue between Memorial Drive and Main Street for Bradley Beach Land. It's a 4-hour closure. 2022-16.
Sorry.
Mr. Bennell?
Yes.
Mr. Gubatose?
Yes.
Mr. Sexsmith?
Yes.
Mr. Weber absent, Mayor Fox?
Yes. Okay, there are no announcements.
Do we have to table? Do we have to make a motion to table 212, Frank?
No, Bill,
No,
for like
okay.
a second.
Okay, sorry, I just wanted to make sure.
Okay, Mayor and Council reports. Start with Councilman Moore.
I don't have a fire first aid report tonight because Chief Beck has been on vacation since I believe the 8th. And I will get together with him for the first meeting in September and provide the entire county for the month of August. I hear that the 5K was a big success over the weekend. Unfortunately, I can't run it anymore. Maybe next year, because I gave myself a nice birthday present this year. I'm going to get a new knee. No, hopefully next year. That's my report.
Okay, thank you, Councilman.
Yeah, I'll just echo what Councilman Vanel said. 5K was a great success. I'm not the liaison, but I was there, and It was phenomenal. They had almost 800 entries. I'm sure the mayor wanted more of that, but it was just a great day, perfect weather for the fun. And for those who can't run, there were some walkers as well. I can barely walk. Al, I can barely walk. Otherwise, I have no other comments.
Thank you. Council President, section.
We'll start with the police report. Since the last council meeting, the K-9 unit assisted a neighboring agency with a search which resulted in the arrest and seizure of contraband. Police arrested and charged the subject with harassment stemming from a road rage incident. Police arrested and charged the subject with obstructing the administration of law. They took a report of a bicycle theft. They also took a report for 2 motor vehicle burglaries. Police also took a report for the theft of a catalytic converter from a motor vehicle. Moving on to the Board of Education. The Board of Education has appointed Michael Heidelberg as the new school superintendent. Mr. Heidelberg has a BA in English from Rutgers University and a master's in education leadership from St. Peter's University, and is currently the principal of the Samuel E. Scholl Middle School in Perth Amboy. Mr. Heidelberg brings a wealth of experience to Bradley Beach, and his actual start date is dependent on when he is released from his current position. I would also like to take a moment to thank the interim superintendent, Margaret Hayes, for assisting the board through the selection process, and making sure all the preparations are in place for whatever the hopes will be a successful school year. Thank you. Let's see you tomorrow.
Thank you, Council President. Okay, I just have a few things, a couple things we've mentioned, just an overall comment on weather. We've had a stellar year. As of yesterday, we surpassed our 2021 beach sales, so that's a good thing. So everything else is positive coming in. We're over our forecast. We should hit that pretty well. The Silver Lake outfall work will begin right after Labor Day. We're in final throes of appointing that engineering resource, get that managed. We had a national night out. It was a big success on August 2nd. Had a super turnout, similar to last year. Sergeant Solaro did a great job, really coordinating with the Chief Reed and his team. The 5K, I'll just talk about that. We mentioned already that we had 800 participants that came from the tri-state area. Good news is we had no injuries. According to EMS, and Todd Rigdon, who was really the point person, did a spectacular job coordinating between public works, police, fire, EMS. It was a big success. It's actually become one of the big races in the area for the summertime, so that's great for our community. Sunday night we held the Mayor's Wellness Walk on Promenade. We did have solid participation. I was walking a little slower because I ran the 5K and my phones don't work that well anymore to do 5Ks. Moving to the library, the 4th Avenue entrance is closed because of some construction we're doing. August 29th at 3:30, there's a Bermuda Triangle food room. They're going to do a kind of school-based mystery. August 31st, VR Dives is a virtual reality ocean dive at 3 o'clock at the library. Teens can get up close to shipwreck, coral reefs, and marine life. And then on September 8th at 2 o'clock, there's the 10 warning signs about Alzheimer's. This program via Zoom will help you recognize common signs of disease in yourself and others, help you take next steps, including how to talk to a doctor. Council President Sexsmith mentioned thanking Margaret Hayes, the interim superintendent, and welcoming Michael Heidelberg, transferring from Perth Amboy. I think the selection committee did a great job. Margaret Hayes has done a great job. I think good things are in store for us. Family, like a meeting set up with Michael, but he's very community oriented, likes to partner. So we're really looking forward to strong partnerships going forward. And that is the end of my report. Now move to the next agenda item, which I believe is public comments. Public comments. Yes.
Nancy Meadow, Ocean Park Avenue. I realize that the interactive Zoom is new and we're still transitioning and tweaking. However, when we had the only Zoom meetings, I used to have to say, who else is in the room with the mayor? Because people like to know who the representatives are, who might still be in the room. So these people here who care enough to be spending their evening on Zoom only see the council and Erica. And I do believe that we have representatives that are usually at the table. We have one this evening. We have borough employees. And I think that at the beginning of the meeting, we should all be made public to the Zoom people. Regarding ending the term and loose ends. Mr. President Sexsmith, you once mentioned, or maybe twice, that there are other forms of government to consider. I'd really like to know more about that. I hope you can share that with us prior to the end of the term.
Sure.
We are currently paying out a communications consultant. It took 4 days for anything to go on the website regarding the upsets at, well, some people are calling it the McKay Beach, other people are calling it the Ocean Park Beach. We who live there call it the fishing beach. I cannot believe we were consulted for communicating. It took 4 days. And it's the third thing listed on that day's things of announcements. For those of us that thought the beach was the jewel, apparently the communications consultant does not share that opinion. Most importantly, I hope by the end of the term, something is passed regarding zoning, motels and hotels, especially on Main Street. There are a lot of properties. There is room to build. It needs to be prohibited. And perhaps if you lived at that end of town, you might think that way. It's another loose end that I keep bringing it up. And I'm ignored, but we all know even if it takes me 10 years, like a ramp, I get what I want. I'd like to know still why the police department got a $38,000 construction truck. No answers on that. It's disturbing to me. I've been to a few of the evening events in town when I first moved here, and we had volunteers running tourism. There would be hundreds of people in attendance. I've not counted more than 50. So something is wrong, and we're paying someone again. I hate wasting money. I like to feel like I'm getting a good bang for my buck. Just all in all, so much to do. You can write a new resolution to change the meeting dates. It's a possibility. And I just, again, encourage everyone to do what's right for the people. Stop ignoring us. Even the people that don't speak seem to have all wanted a very scaled down, slightly renovated church, but we weren't given that opportunity. The same people that wanted this huge thing, they were all the ones consulted. And I think you would find we'd be a better town if you listened to us and respected us. Thank you.
You're next. You're next.
Yeah.
No, go ahead, Sean.
Okay.
You're-
Shauna Greenblatt, 414 Monmouth Avenue. So I'm going to bring up a question that's a bit of an elephant in the room, still in the borough. There was mention of an Oprah attorney. When was an Oprah attorney hired and what was the reason?
This is for comments, but I'll just quickly answer your question. We hired one in January, as part of our reorganization.
Is it typical for a borough this size to have a dedicated Oprah attorney?
It really depends on municipality.
Really depends.
That's, I don't understand. Is it
I mean,
typical?
Englewood Cliffs has one, fair enough.
Englewood Cliffs has its own Oprah attorney?
It depends on what's going on in the town.
Okay, so is this someone that's on the books heretofore, that's gonna be budgeted for going forward, or did this have something to do with an abundance of Oprah requests?
We had a lot of Oprah requests in December,
Mhm.
and the administration suggested to the mayor that we also hire an Oprah attorney. We try to turn them around faster.
Okay, so I guess just going back to on the Shampkin, is there a consequence when an Oprah request is not properly fulfilled?
Well, we'd have to establish if that's the case.
Okay, so that's really an important question. If it's being alleged that information wasn't provided, isn't it the responsibility of the municipality to fulfill the Oprah request?
Yes, it is.
So, I mean, that's really something that's important to look into, and I would like to, I would hope that will be challenged to the Oprah attorney. Obviously, you can't answer that.
No, he's not the Oprah attorney.
No, I understand that, but I'm hoping the Oprah attorney is not here to represent, to respond to the question. So then the other thing is, now that we have an Oprah attorney specifically, we have an issue in Bradley Beach with regard to all of these Oprah requests. There was a public response by, Councilman Sexsmith that many of these Oprah requests did indeed come from his computer. And indicated that he wasn't going to share the information of who he lent his computer to. I'm wondering, is this a concern in the borough? The fact that we have so many Oprah requests, is this a concern?
Well, Oprah is a right that people have. And the time it's taken is Oprah attorneys. It's my time, it's any councilman's Oprah time, it's Erica's time. So you want to minimize to the extent you can, but it's a right that people have based on New Jersey statutes.
Right, I understand it's a right that people have. I understand that the right is also to be able to be anonymous. But if it's coming from the computer of a council person,
That's really not, that's just. The Oprah process is one that the volume comes from all over the place, not one person or one computer. It comes
So-
from all over the place.
well, I mean, how many Oprah requests came from the computer that seemed to be an issue? Because to me, this is problematic. To me, if there were many Oprah requests that came from the computer of a council person, then it's a challenge to the integrity of the entire administrative body, the legislative body. I would think that would be a concern.
No more than concerned speeding tickets, right? So
I'm sorry?
I don't know what you're trying to get at. But
Yeah.
from the
You don't know
government
what I'm
people-
trying to get at? What I'm trying to get at
Okay.
is that there has been a division, divisiveness within the mayor and council, and it's trickled down to the entire community. There's been a lot of negative energy about a preponderance of Oprah requests that have been made of council.
Yeah.
And
Well, I'm telling you-
we had a councilman, excuse me one moment, we had a councilman who walked out of the meeting, who
Oh my God. she's really good.
was on the verge of resigning and then decided not to resign, and then came back at another meeting and indicated that all of those other requests actually did indeed come from his computer, but he wasn't going to share who exactly it was, who he lent his computer to. So it's guilt by association somehow. This has been a problem within the community, and I know that Mayor Fox, you have made allegations that there's been politicking, a lot of politicking, and a lot of divisiveness that has been created. And I think, I don't know whether it was to the community you meant, community members, social media, council. And to me, it's a problem. It's a problem that this has occurred.
Thank you. Next.
I'm on mute.
I think I may have the home by the time I leave.
Oh,
My name is Jean Leahy. I live at 419 Park Place. My big concern is Airbnbs. I'm gonna read this because otherwise I go off. I need the mayor and the council to save our town from Airbnbs. They're not neighbors, they're investors. We're all here tonight because we care about our town. The town can limit how many Airbnbs should be allowed on each block. I live on the fourth block. I live on the fourth block of Park Place. We've had one, 408. It lists
that people can sleep there, 9 people. They have a shared driveway. And so where they park in the street, and because they have their friends, so that leaves no parking for us. I have a shared driveway with very good neighbors. We respect that. But on Sundays, we know we can't go out because we may not get our park back. All right, let me see here, but back to my thing. They have a shared driveway, okay, but they all over our residents. 423 now, my little house next door to me, big house. It's on the corner. Anyhow, now they're in Airbnb, and they're like hotels. I bought my house 20 odd years ago. Nice old house in a residential, no Airbnbs. I don't want to live next to a motel. I don't like the idea of having strange people all there. I didn't bargain for that. All right. Well, here I go, because I wrote this down. I bought my house 20 years ago in a residential time. I know my neighbors and we are a friendly community. We are a community and we're friends. These investors, they're not friends. They don't want to be. They're in out. I'm now living in a commercial hotel district with multiple homes being used as hotels on my block. I feel like I'm living next to a motel with different strangers every weekend. This is impacting my quiet retired years and the enjoyment of my property and the quality of my life. These hotels are open all year long, and there are more in town each time. We need better ordinances. We need rules that they can only have so many. You're destroying the whole community. Okay. I just said that. We need an ordinance and guidelines. Okay, we need to protect tax-paying residents. Thank you.
Yeah, and to be very open, we had a conversation.
We did, and I also talked to a councilman also.
Right, what I told this lady is we've been trying to get short-term rentals on the agenda for a number of months.
Get it on, and they keep
And
coming.
I just asked, while you were talking, I just confirmed with the council president and second that it is on the agenda, either September or October.
But other towns have resolutions and they can keep it down. It isn't fair to us year
No, I understand.
rounders.
So the short-term rental, we have a draft ordinance and we did copy that from a couple other towns. So we'll move, hoping to move on that in September, October time.
But in the meantime, they're already here, so
In the
those
meantime,
can't
there's
be
very little we can do.
reneged.
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
I live on Park Place Avenue, 415,
You need to give your name, please.
Rosemary Curso. I own the home there. When I bought that home, there was an ordinance that said there were no group rentals beyond the 300 block. Now, we have 2 Airbnbs, and believe me, they're group rentals. There's family, there's older people, middle-aged people, young people with children, all renting at the same time. That's a group rental, in my opinion. We had an ordinance. Where did that ordinance go? And who changed it without taking it up with the people that pay real estate taxes? Why aren't we asked when an ordinance is taken off the books? We were never asked. All of a sudden, the people bought the house across the street. I asked them what they were going to do. They said they're going to use it themselves. A month later, it's an Airbnb. The guy next to Gene bought his house. Oh, I have my children. I want a nice place for them. It's an Airbnb. And there again, there are groups renting. It's older people, young people, people with children. So there are group rentals. And has the ordinance been taken off the books, or is it still on the books? And if it's still on the books, then we need to put a stop to it, the Airbnbs. Okay,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
You know, it's always, chapter number of 1034. It's always a battle. Worldwide, when you try to preserve. As a historic monument. I mean, we have a little town of 4,100 people. And we have something which ties us, the 140-year-old history of this town together, and that's 319 Lorraine. It's not the Parthenon, it's not the Colosseum, but it's the nucleus of our little town. And it's something that I think is worth fighting for. It's not parallel to Grand Central Station, but Grand Central Station was a big fight. And Jackie Kennedy, Onassis, was very important to preserving what we have there now, which is tremendous. I just wanted to read something quickly. This is Jackie Onassis, 1975, Jackie Kennedy Onassis. Is it not cruel to let our city die by degrees, stripped of all her proud monuments, until there will be nothing left of all her history and beauty to inspire our children? If they are not inspired by the past of our city, where will they find the strength to fight for the future? Americans care about their past, but for short-term gain, they ignore it and tear down everything that matters. Maybe this is the time to take a stand, to reverse the tide, so that we will all end up in a uniform world of steel and glass boxes. We've all heard that it's too late, or that it has to happen. That's inevitable, but I don't think that's true, because I think if there is a great effort, even if it's the 11th hour, then you can succeed. And I know that's what we'll do. And of course, Jackie Kennedy succeeded, no question. The next time you stroll underneath it, the ceilings and the murals in Grand Central Station, you can thank Jackie Kennedy. So I think it's extremely important. And it's the, you know, as I said before, it's just the nucleus that ties this little town together. So I'm willing to fight the 11th hour, that's for damn sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, I'm sorry. I'll get you. Sorry. Let's see it.
This way.
Hi, George Proto, 409 Parkway Avenue. I want to comment about the Airbnb. They're absolutely right. There's people constantly coming and going all summer, you know, who monitors this? The parking situation is true. They take up all the parking in the immediate area, and, you know, the neighbors who don't have driveways have nowhere to park. And I'm here over 50 years. Shouldn't people who paid all this money in taxes have a say whether this should be there or not? I mean, when people do construction, sometimes we have a say. Shouldn't it have been, you know, these people were very slick about it. They never mentioned what they were gonna do. I asked them, they said, well, we don't know yet, but they knew exactly what they were gonna do. You know, I just feel that I'm there a long time. We should have some kind of say. You know, I don't think it's right that it is what this. No, I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm sorry, it was,
I got folks lined up.
you.
We're waiting. Mr. Mayor, Councilman, Officer, Mr. Cannon, young lady. My name is Evelyn Lopez. I live at 417 Parkplace Avenue. I've lived there for 53 years. I love my town. I love my street. I love my neighbors. But I'm a little ticked off with this Airbnb stuff going on. First of all, as my friends ahead of me have said, you have all these rentals. I know it's been discussed before. what I would like to do is there seems to be, it was my understanding, when one group left, it was supposed to go in and be inspected before they got another CO. That's what I was told. If that's true or not, I don't know. When we see these big groups of people, some are families, some you just see like 10 of them walking down the street, all ages. You know, we welcome everybody, but how do we know who these people are? I'm sure whoever rents it is probably investigated or background check. But how do we know who all these other people are that come and go? You know, that's kind of like a safety issue to the neighborhood. I've been here all these years, seeing the good, the bad, and the ugly, to be perfectly honest. And like I say, it's a wonderful little town, but the whole ambiance of our block, I mean, we're at Park Place Avenue, 400 block, and of course I favor my own little block. We all look out for each other. And I don't like it. I'm telling you, council members and Mr. Mayor, we don't like it at all.
Yeah.
That's all I like to say, and we hope something can be done.
No, I
We've got
appreciate it, and we.
two of them on our block now, two of them with this, you know, such a small area.
So
It's not right.
keep your eye on the agenda coming up, because it will be a short-term rental ordinance, so you'll be able to look at that, critique it, give us input. And
Yeah, it kind of seems like, I mean, I'm one of these, I'm the older generation. I'm not embarrassed to say, I don't even have to turn a computer on, so I can't do, I'm glad I can come here today and talk. I can't do all this Zoom stuff and all that kind of stuff. If somebody puts a shower in or puts something in their house, the neighbors get letters, we have to, you know, come and appear. Why, when they're putting in something like that, do we not get notified? I never got any notification that this was being done or people were applying for these Airbnbs.
I gotta think on that a little bit.
You know what I'm saying? It's a single family. When we moved in, it's single.
Yeah, because if you have rental, you know, you have people renting for weeks or 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. We don't, you know, we don't do background checks, or that's the renter, that's the owner's responsibility.
And what I'm saying is they're all single homes, and all of a sudden it's Airbnb, where it's people
So that's-
coming in for
that's
3 and 4 nights,
That's
then they're
why
gone.
we address the ordinance.
Then there's another group. I appreciate it very much. I appreciate you. Let me get before you, and try not to give you too part of the time.
No, you're fine.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Yes. Let me guess, Park Place.
Good evening, yes, yes. My name is Louise Millman. I'm a homeowner at 502 Park Place Avenue. My husband and I live one door away from an Airbnb. It's at 506 Park Place Avenue, and I've had some issue in the past with garbage, etc. I want to show you the ad that they have on VRBO, Vacation by Owner. This gentleman who owns this house makes approximately $7,300 a month. The other Airbnb on the 400 block makes approximately $18,000 a month with their daily rental of over $600 a night. I want to know, what is the town doing to collect fees? I know my taxes went sky high all of a sudden this year, sky high. I just paid them. And I have neighbors who are homeowners next to me making thousands and thousands of dollars a month. I want to know, where is the town being compensated for the businesses that are being run on Park Place Avenue? I used to live across the street from the halfway house on the corner of Fletcher Lake. That was also a for-profit business, you see. So, and as I sit on my porch, every few days, there's a brand new family that comes in. The cleaning people come in. There's a lot of systems in place. People are really, really, really making a lot of money at Airbnbs. I understand that, but I want to know what the town is doing to supervise. When I asked this question a year ago, I was told, well, there's really very little we can do. How did you find that out? How did you, you just look online and it's there.
Yeah.
It's right in front of you. And the calendars are full, and they're full for next year as well. They're already blocked out for next year. So it's really imperative that if they're going to function as these for-profit businesses, and they are, and that's baloney when I read that the owner is actually residing at the house, because they're not. I live right next door, I see it. They come in periodically just to show their face. And I think that that's really wrong. I moved out of New York City for a good reason. I was really tired of the idea of rentals. And I live in between rentals. Some are great, some are not great. You know, and we have systems in place to help us out as homeowners and people who need peace of mind. But the parking and the partying that's going on at the Airbnbs are really ridiculous. In fact, this guy is advertising that the local brewery is in walking distance, so you don't even have to have your car. And this tiny house is housing 6 to 8 people. Come on, there's a bunk bed and there's a queen size bed. What are they doing? You know what I'm saying? So I really need my town, my council, the resources that the town has that I pay taxes for to start collecting from these businesses. In fact, better yet, not allowing these short-term rentals to come and go and come and go. It's really very problematic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For your time.
Thank you for your. Yes.
Thomas J. Cohen, 612 Third Avenue. Another factor in this Airbnb is that we're losing rental properties for residents who really need them. That's another big thing that no one's talking about, but it's going to take over the whole town. So we look forward to that ordinance. Mayor, I had a question for you. I know you're on the land use board, and they unfortunately don't have a public comment at the end. So I want to ask, how come this OWL product is not being used at the land use board? It'd be nice for these 24 participants we had tonight to be on the land use board meetings.
I'm not the chair of the land use board. I can pass that along to them.
But this is why we have the product here to share with the public.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, excuse me. Oh, no, not you.
Oh, okay. Mr. Cannon, we completed our affordable housing registration with the court so that we are now going to get affordable housing when the next projects are ever done on Main Street, or are we just going to wait?
It's fine, it's pending, it's progressing through the court, through the special master at this moment. But it's certainly filed.
Could you keep us apprised of that going forward? Because I mean, it would be nice of us to know that next time we won't not get the 7 units that we really should have had in the first 2 projects. So if you could give us an update now and then, it'd be great.
No problem.
Appreciate it. And then Mayor, in terms of the bonding I talked about before, if you actually read the 2 bonding resolutions from tonight, 2022-10 and 2022-11, they have a 20 and a 25-year useful life built into them. You set your bonding for the useful life of the improvement. And that was the flaw in the survey. It should have been a 40-year useful life. Clearly different financial people present things differently, and you have a lot of them on your payroll. You must have just picked the wrong one on that one. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes. Oh, wait. She's handing, so, no, let me go first. Oh, go ahead. Oh, I'll take my medicine early.
Good, need it. 419 Park Place, Victoria Lakey. I'm as well, about the Airbnbs. I'm just gonna say this, I'm very concerned about the growing trend in town. It's overdeveloped. Your focus seems to be on tourism and not the people who truly live here. As a full-time year-round resident, it appears that you have lost focus and it goes to commercializing and selling out Bradley Beach in general. If you make the effort that you put this disclaimer on the website that there'll be a fine and they're going to do something, then do something about it. Enforce the code. If they're supposed to be inspected every time that there's a rotation, then go and enforce it. Make them pay for the CO. Or how about this? How about there's a tourism tax or a hotel tax? Because that's what we're living next to, the revolving door. That being said, there was a question that Mr. Bennell posed on Facebook about a destination transit village. That's disturbing. That's already what we're becoming. That's what we're trending to be. Poor planning will affect us and ruin Bradley Beach. It's no longer going to lose its charming little town atmosphere if this continues. So yes, please put a stop to the whole Airbnb nonsense. Protect, please, the north end of Bradley Beach for a change, so you don't allow a bigger hotel that's going to take over on the north end of town, because that's who you're infringing and affecting upon. That's where there's space, and that's where it's ruined, and that's where it's going to end up, because it would never end up on the south side. And lastly, now that we decided who actually has access to the internet or not, there's a certain demographic in town that doesn't have means or access to the internet. So I suggest the newsletter. How about that be made available at town hall, the library, at a senior meeting? So these people can pick up and read the newsletter on a regular basis, so they know what's going on. Admittedly, there's a population that does not follow Facebook or they're not on social media, but maybe that would be a nice way to include everybody so they know what the hell is going on in town. And my last, the setup in this room, if we're gonna have this setup and if we're gonna have a presentation, how about we tilt the chairs so we all can see the screen, just like you can see the screen. So maybe we can change up things up a little and just flip the room setup. Just a thought. Thank you.
Tom Gavin, 414 Fourth Avenue. I apologize, I'm going to be reading my remarks, so I'll be quoting multiple legal formats. I want to be sure they're mentioned correctly. First, I want to truly thank the Bradley Beach Police, Fire, OEM, First Aid, especially DPW for their support last Saturday at the Bradley Beach Run. I had multiple friends running. Sorry, Greg, I missed you. I didn't see you running. I did notice that must have been. I did notice there are a few people that should have been timed with a sundial. I won't mention any names, Larry. And they all said what a great event it was and how much fun they had at lunch at Main Street. All my friends went out for lunch. It was great. They really had a good time. The other reason I need to speak is that I have become aware that my property at 414 Fourth Avenue has, for a second time, become the target of an Oprah request. I learned this when I actually Oprah'd the Oprah log of the borough while researching a different issue. In reviewing the purpose of the New Jersey Open Public Records Act, I found a Citizen's Guide to the Open Public Records Act, second edition, July 2011. It states, the laws compiled in the statutes et sequitur, specifically, Oprah is intended to expand the public's right of access to government records, create an administrative appeals process if access is denied, and define what records are and are not government records. And further, research the state of New Jersey Department of Community Affairs Division of Codes and Standards published a directive originally in July of 2003 and revised in 2013. The Open Public Records Act building plans. Because this statutory reference is broad, the department has sought to provide clarity for Oprah. Adopted on October 17, 2011, the department's rule provides that building plans submitted in conjunction with permit applications are exempt from disclosure. The reason for the exemption is simple. Oprah requires government records be provided to a citizen without requiring an explanation why the records are wanted. That standard operates well for most records, but building plans are an exception to the general rule. They contain details about building construction, security, safety that should not be available to just anyone upon request. This does not mean that no one should ever be able to view or obtain. It means that no one should be able to view or obtain copies of building plans without a valid reason for doing so. According to attorneys, this proviso was sent to prevent miscreants, social deviants, gadflies, sexual predators, potential thieves, those who may wish ill on the occupants of these buildings, among others, from obtaining the details of buildings plans, access points, and security. The key phrase is valid reason for doing so. As my home has been fully vetted by all construction officials in Bradley Beach Code and Construction Office, and my file has been closed, as satisfying all necessary procedures, I asked for a valid reason for my plans to be released. Continuing on in the directive quoted above, site plans and architectural renderings, the department's rule specifies, are different from building plans. They are public records that are subject to disclosure under Oprah. Members of the public should be given access to general information, site layout, architectural renderings. This actually request to view the site plans is usually for a specific project. The person asking, for example, could be a neighbor who has a concern that the project undertaken on an adjacent property might have impact on their property. Where the request to see plans is really a site concern, access to the site plan can be offered under Oprah and is likely to satisfy the requester. The person requesting this Oprah on our home at 414 Fourth Avenue is neither a neighbor nor someone who has any valid reason to be following up on the Bradley Beach Code and Construction Office. No variances were requested, nothing was accomplished that was not approved by the Bradley Beach Code and Construction Office. I cannot say what is prompting the Oprah request. However, I do now understand the concerning personal nature that such a request may bring on any resident of Bradley Beach or any other town where such random requests are made. On advice of counsel, I would ask the Borough of Bradley Beach to not release these plans until such time as the requester can provide a valid reason for the request to the borough. I trust that the person requesting this report
a serial Oprah requester in our borough, has no ill will toward the safety and security of myself, my family, and hopefully does not have a history of causing this type of upheaval to other residents of our borough. I would also like to believe that as someone who lives in the borough, this person places the qualifications of the members of our code and construction office at the level they deserve and are attended to. Would it be possible if this person has a history of instigating this random type of controversy in other municipalities? Should we be concerned that this person is just transferring that psychological need for attention to our borough? This constant solicitation of records should cause the borough to question any further requests submitted by this resident that do not rise to the necessary level of causation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Looks like there's no other questions, so we're gonna move it to,
Actually, we have somebody on Zoom.
we have somebody in Zoom,
Yep.
sorry.
That's okay. We have Don Greenberg. Don?
Yep,
Okay.
just unmuting. Don Greenberg, 302 Park Place Ave. I was totally unaware of the B&Bs on the 400 and 500, the Airbnbs on the 400 and 500 block. And I was just wondering if Greg or somebody in the administration can answer the question that was asked. Is the group rental ordinance still on the books?
Yes, it is.
And then how come it's not being enforced?
So I think it was 2000, let's say 17, group rentals were the classic group rentals, having a rooming house basically was taken off the books. There's a difference between these homes and a rooming house, and then people could argue that point. The reason we want to get a short-term rental ordinance is to preclude what's happened, and that is there's been a kind of, call it disruptive, I won't call it analogous to a disruptive technology. Something's changed. Uber was a disruptive technology. The internet gives you the ability to go through a rental process in a very fleet-footed way. So we're trying to back that up and figure out the best way to manage this in our town. We've got, as I said, a draft ordinance that's been around since the spring that we need to get in front of people and start talking about. So
Yeah, I totally get that, Mr. Mayor, but I think you said there is still a group rental ordinance on the books.
yes.
So how come that ordinance is not being enforced? If you have an Airbnb, that can, so let me finish. If you have an Airbnb that, you know, a house that maybe can legitimately sleep 4 people and you've got 8 in there, wouldn't that fall within the confines of the ordinance as a group rental?
The ordinance really tried to deal more with like a rooming house.
Does it say rooming houses, or is it just specific on the number of people in a specific house that can sleep a certain number of people?
Describes it that way, the ordinance. I've reviewed the ordinance.
How it describes it as a rooming house?
It basically says a rooming house, yes. And that's, there are 3 rooming houses left in Bradley Beach that are now under state control, not local control.
Gotcha.
And they are grandfathered. So when they go away, that's the end of that.
And so so if I understand you right, this ordinance really only addresses those 3 homes?
Yes, well, it addresses all, prior to that, you know, a lot of these kind of group rentals, and they. As I said, we're gonna have a short-term rental ordinance.
Right.
That we've been trying to get out there for a number of months.
No, and that's a great thing, but if there have too many people in the Airbnb, wouldn't that violate occupancy rules? If they're over occupying the house?
Yeah, and if we're aware of somebody over occupying, we would get code in to look at that immediately.
So theoretically, if one of the neighbors who had previously spoke saw that a large group of people was occupying a house over and above the occupancy rating for that house, they could say something to the zoning officer, and the zoning officer, or the code officer rather, could then go out and cite the offending homeowner, correct? Yes, no, maybe?
Correct, yes, I said yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Okay. So have there been any fines issued? Have any citations been issued?
I don't know the answer to that.
I know, I'm assuming the code officer is not at the meeting tonight. I can't see.
People get take CO2.
Can we get the answer to that? I mean, can we get the answer to that question? Have any citations been issued on any of these Airbnbs for over occupancy?
You can ask the code officer that very question.
Thank you very much. And if you can get back to me, I'd appreciate it.
Any other questions?
That's all I got. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Just one. We have Eileen Shishius. Hi, Eileen.
Sorry about that. I couldn't see the shading of your hand.
I didn't see it either at first.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Eileen Shishius, 112 4th Avenue. It would be very helpful to the taxpayers to have a detailed financial report from the activities of the Memorial Day weekend festivities. For example, revenues from the event collected from the vendors, the cost of the parade, the police, and public works. What was the net for the borough and how were the revenues allocated? Having this information can be helpful for financial decisions making for future events. That's my first comment. My second one is in view of what I just heard about Airbnbs. I'm very concerned about the Airbnb that's being advertised and just being recently renovated across the street from our grammar school. That concerns me. That makes me a little nervous. Secondly, the camera is an issue because during this, I'm watching it on Zoom, and it's very distracting to only have the camera focusing on mainly Councilman Burnell and Councilman Gubitosi. Occasionally you see Mayor Fox, and very rarely are you seeing Mr. Councilman Sexsmith. So it's important that this optic is corrected because it's distracting almost. You lose something in the optics. So it's just a suggestion, an observation that I've observed. And if there could be some follow-up answers to my questions about Memorial Day, I would appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, if there's no other questions.
Excuse me. Excuse me.
Yes.
Can you, if you're saying, can I expect a time as to when we will get a report about the Memorial Day?
No.
No, it happened Memorial Day and we're into Labor Day. Shouldn't the
I'm not sure. So if you're, I got your comment, and I need to speak to the people who ran the Memorial Day deal.
Okay, so we will have all this information offered to us?
It's open information here.
Okay, well, I appreciate a final report. Thank you very much.
We'll close the public meeting and go to executive session to discuss attorney-client privilege, pending anticipation of litigation and contract negotiation matters. There's two items: public property and the location. So, make a motion to approve the resolution 2017.
Mr. Bennell?
Yes.
Mr. Gubitosi?
Yes.
Mr. Sexsmith? Mr. Weber absent, Mayor Fox.
Okay, thank you all. Have a good evening. Good time. So, yeah.
Yeah.
They don't just make it.
Yeah.
No, I think you guys.
Yeah.
It's fine. Yeah, they just want to come back. Yeah, no, my dad understand. So I was like. Try really appreciate this, you know, I'm gonna think about.
Yes.
Nice meeting you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
That's Ron, I want to get home.
Score, by the way, with 0-0 at the top of the second. I've done that for Council with Weber for watching it last one. This one. You two, top 7. Josh, I wasn't better than 75 this year. The best fan, but I wasn't a great monster. He's definitely going over college. Good.
I got a friend of mine.
Yeah.
Okay.
We gotta make a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
That's.
You all.